We are driving on to the Tufts campus now. We're on campus, and we are headed over to 10 Upper Campus Road, the home of Circle, where I'm going to drop you and Christian off, and I am going to pick up our amazing leader, Kay Kawashima Ginsburg, who has been working all night.
Who's this coming up?
This is Kay.
Hello. Good morning.
How are you?
Great. It's post-election. It's time to have fun.
Last night was the night of the 2018 midterm election, and it was an exciting night of just trying to figure out whether young people had an influence on the election, just watching you share and who won, who lost.
It is now 5:36 a.m. and I'm here this early partly because we need to analyze some election data, figure out how young people voted and how many of them voted.
We're going to be collecting data and calculating some numbers, running some analyses, and putting out a release hopefully by midday.
After the election, we come together as a team just a few hours after we say goodnight and we count all the votes that's been cast in the United States by all voters yesterday, and we use a pretty simple formula to calculate or at least estimate how young people turned out to vote.
That way we can determine the impact that young people made on the 2018 midterms.
Why are you up so early?
Because we want to get it done and out there, and want to get it out there so it can be useful for this news cycle.
We try to estimate what's called youth voter turnout, and it's the earliest we can do, and we're actually fairly well known for that.
It is quite a bit of work, and so it's not something that just takes 1 or 2 hours. It's going to take us quite a while to do the work.
In order to do that, though, we have to kind of keep watching each congressional, governor, and Senate races, and for each candidate's votes cast, and add them all up.
So we can see whether they either swung a race, kept races close, or in other words, just basically how young people made a difference.
It's also because the data aren't really available until the middle of the night, so we wait until there's a time when we have most precincts reporting it about 95%, so we don't have to go back and redo the work again.
We are now trying to pull data into a spreadsheet that we individually fill out, and the point is to try to count the votes cast total for each of the race we have.
The NBC News one looks good, but you have to click on Show More.
Where's the NBC Politics? How do you find the...
NBCnews.com Politics 2018-elections.
In order to make the process a little bit easier, Ray has figured out how to pull data off a website and kind of create a spreadsheet that kind of lists all the numbers that we need so we can copy and paste it easily, but we're, I guess, in a way, trying to look for the best site for that right now.
I am currently taking the vote tallies for the state of Ohio for each of the House races and inputting those data into our spreadsheet. We each have an individual spreadsheet that we use to calculate vote tallies, and then we have a master spreadsheet.
Right now I am aggregating state vote tallies across a selection of states, so everything from Alabama all the way down to Indiana, and entering it onto this giant spreadsheet. And from the spreadsheet we will collect all of this data.
So it's 6:45 now, and what I'm doing now is making pretty good progress on now hand typing the tallies by the congressional races and Senate and governor race.
There are teams of two working on groups of states. So Kay and I have New York through Wyoming.
I'm now on state of Ohio.
So I've done New York,
And now moving on to Oklahoma,
North Carolina, and North Dakota. And so what we need to do, as you can see there, is input the data from the results into their respective columns.
How's your work going?
It's going good. A little bit slow going, but I think at this point, just trying to plug away at it.
This is for the House races, for the Senate races, and for the governor's races.
once we are through our states and know that enough states have reported close to 99% or at least 95% of the precincts, and we feel like we have a full tally, at least full enough tally to move forward, then we will reconcile any differences we're seeing between the two staff members who are doing the same states.
This is what a completed one looks like. New York is a good one to see because of all of the House districts, and then there is a Senate race and there is a governor's race.
Once we have an agreement, I then think we have enough numbers reported, then we'll move all the numbers of state totals to what we call master spreadsheet, which is a shared team spreadsheet where we will actually start to calculate our turnout estimate for use.
And then all the way to the right, the totals are calculated for us automatically by what we input. And so then we get a highest vote count, and so we will have that in our master spreadsheet in hopefully a few hours.
So I went through all the states now, yay. But now I'm going back to states like Oregon where, it's all mail voting. So they're still opening some of the mails. So some districts have a good chunk of the votes come in, but not others.
I am still working on the state results. I am up to South Dakota. I've got Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming to do.
So I may actually wait at this point and start to think about what we're saying overall in the narrative by starting to look at some of the news feeds and see what kind of, conversations are starting to happen around young people and their voting.
Working furiously to try to get these done as soon as possible. We'd like to get these done before 9 o'clock, but I don't know. It's taking a really long time. So I'm going to stop talking to you now and get back to work.
There seems to be already some narrative around how young people didn't show up quite enough for Democratic candidates. That's often very common. Although for us, it's not at all young people's job to tip an election per se, but it's much more about the participation level. All right, I think we're pretty much ready.
First, before we set an agenda, anyone have any reflections?
They passed the ballot measure, right, to restore voting rights, 1.2 million people. So that's a pretty huge deal.
Yeah, Loki is like a top 3 election result in last night. There's 1.5 million more voters for 2020.
Amazing.
And the election will probably come down to Florida again, because it always does.
We have at least a few agenda items. One is an update on what happened last night. Anything else to add to the agenda?
I have a call with a journalist at 10. So if there's any stories you'd like to highlight or anything you're seeing that may suggest a high youth turnout that's solid enough, I'd like to hear it. There are plenty of very, very close contests, especially at the Congress level. So again, those are kind of, just another point to affirm that young people can really make a difference if they come out to vote.
I have one question.
Sure.
Do we have a hard deadline for turnout?
I think that's something we're deciding at noon from what we were talking about yesterday. But this is a good kind of a canary in a coal mine in a way. If there's some huge problems or, just like California would be something I'm interested in hearing. I looked really quickly, but I want to hear from you guys sort of how things are going there.
Any observations or conclusions from the midterms?
I do think that we've seen since 2016 that the new generation of young voters that we call Gen Z, there is a high uptick of engagement, of activism.
People put in a bunch of work last night, particularly Alberto. I think we owe Alberto a huge...
Yeah.
And so what have you been doing specifically over the last day or two with the midterms?
So, been doing a lot of writing and a lot of editing, which is sort of one of the big parts of my role. Also working with a lot of graphics and things we put on social media. So, I see my job as trying to kind of translate the numbers into words, which a lot of my colleagues are also really good at.
As we had talked about, sometimes the youth share does shift, and last night it shifted down 3 points. So we were pretty excited for a while that we thought that the youth share might be 16%, which would be, pretty unheard of for next both of midterm. However, after they updated the exit poll, and this happened, I don't know, maybe like 11 p.m., they shifted it down to 13%, which was what it was in 2014 and not totally off track from what it has been. The story here is that, yes, the youth share is the same, but it's a much bigger pie. So even though it's the same percentage, it's a much bigger slice. And so that means that young people's turnout is sort of at least kept up with older voters this year. I don't know if y'all saw it in the post, but it's to Kate's point that young people were probably key in congressional races, although we don't have youth vote choice at that level. It's just 67% of young people voting for Democratic candidates is the highest we've ever seen in the past 20 years at least.
Yeah, so once we get exit poll crosstabs that can let us look at age, gender, and race, I think we'll really understand whether there was a subgroup of youth that favored Republican candidates in House. I think right now it's unclear. Our polling had suggested that maybe would still be white male would be that one group, and then this sort of curiosity, at least by me, about sort of what is the gender gap, especially among white young people.
The AP worked with Fox News and maybe someone else to do something called Broadcast.
It was a NORC. Yeah.
It was North, right? Yeah.
It's a wholly different methodology than the exit poll. I mean, it's similar in that they use multiple ways of gathering data, so they catch voters who vote early and vote on election day, but it's very different. And ironically, the youth share is the same as the exit poll.
Both the national exit poll and the vote cast use the historical share of youth as a way to control for the overestimation of youth share and turnout before. So I don't know to what extent they potentially artificially put down the share of youth.
The state ones, like Florida changed a bit, Georgia definitely changed a bit. I bet all the other ones, and I just haven't looked yet. Because I was going to, for example, share that graphic now again on social media, but I don't know if we should.
Young people did vote for a Democratic candidate 2-1 according to a national exit poll. But again, a third or so of young people were voting for a conservative candidate, and that's none of our concern. In some ways, we of course want diverse electorate to come out to vote, both ideologically and demographically.
I was working last night until pretty late on our blog post that we put up with an initial analysis at about 11:30 at night, and now working on our post that will have our youth turnout estimate.
So the things that we'll start to look for in the next couple of days, once we get a little bit more detailed information that we try to buy from the exit poll company, is to look at things like exactly how were young people of different subgroups represented within the youth electorate. We often care about whether, for example, the Latinos and Asian American youth were able to come out at a similar rate as white and black youth, because they're often underrepresented. We have close to 105 million ballots cast for the midterm 2018, which I think is a bit more than maybe last election. I have to look into that and see if that's true or not. But because the young people's population counts also went down between 2014 and 18, and the share held, it looks like we have a maybe very high youth turnout estimate right now.
This was huge, a huge validation of the work that Tisch College and Circle and that you do, because yesterday young people put their finger on the scale big time, and that's what we've been telling people. I just think you ought to feel really good about the work that you do, and I think this is an opportunity to kind of build on that as we go out after the election. Say, see, we told you so. So, you better start listening more carefully to what we have to say.
So we are pretty much done with the counts, with the tallies that we've been doing all morning, and so I have shifted along with Christian over to looking at a county by county analysis of major races in 4 different states, and looking to see how there are differences between youth and who they voted for.
You hear so much in the media about how youth don't vote. A lot of, GOTV ads, a lot of what's written in the press is all about how, you just do not vote, or youth don't know what the issues are about, or you just don't care. And I think that narrative is just flipped on its head this time.
It's also important to note that the last election's midterm turnout for young people was the lowest ever recorded, as was it for the general electorate. So there was nothing to lose for young people, so it's great that it's risen. But if it's really by, in this exit poll's case, it's by 10 points. And it's close to 50% jump in youth turnout.
We're looking at entire states, but we're looking at the county by county data in terms of vote choice, and we are basically averaging those vote choices over all the counties.
As much as there were some challenges in voter suppression on college campuses and otherwise, I think we've seen lots of progress in many stakeholders realizing how important it is to encourage people to vote.
We have a really interesting rough draft of a finding that we are all pretty excited about, and I'm going to wait till Kay's done back there and verify with her.
We are about to finish up the press release, which my coworker Alberto is finishing up, and we'll sort of edit together and finalize what we would say, particularly in things like quotes. And we'll have a brief call for the media partners by early afternoon today.
Hey Kay,
Thank you. I got it right.
did I hear you say 31% for youth turnout? So we're pretty excited about that. Rough draft? Maybe a rough draft. Maybe it is, but it's 31%.
I mean, rough.
Yeah, really rough. That estimate will tighten up later, but 31% for a midterm election for youth is actually magnificent.
I think we aim to publish the press release in less than an hour.
I think we'll put something up on our website to make sure we have it by the time we have a call with the press, and put out the press release right on that too. So we're gonna be finishing up this post and this press release to share youth turnout and to share a little bit more of some of the races where young people really do seem to have made a difference, like in Wisconsin and Nevada, and statewide races where the Democratic candidate did prevail in large part because of the huge youth support for them.
It's 46 for the presidential. All right, that's what we have. 18 to 29 in our youth voting historically graph. So in the 2016 presidential election, the youth turnout for 18 to 29-year-olds was 46.1%, and so we're looking at 31% now.
We are amazingly right on time, as scheduled. No major delay. That's really exciting. I think we'll still maybe see some more votes come in, but as early as now, we're seeing this kind of high turnout. That's really promising.
That kind of turnout for a midterm has not happened since 1982.
Have you come to any sort of resolutions, conclusions, observations?
I probably should have gotten more sleep this week. That's like the number one top line finding for me. And aside from that, not really. I would love to conclude something with certainty, but until we have like a number that ready to go with, I guess, to the press, then I still need to finish up my tallies.
This is just a fun, interesting process. I always have a nice rapport with the team and a lot of really good debates on, how sort of mathematical and researchy we should be, and how newsy and more editorial we should be.
Circle's a great place to work at. We work hard, we work fast, but it's a great team to work at.
It's great to be here. I work remotely usually, so it's just great to be in the office and be feeling like part of the team even more than I usually do.
It gives me a lot of hope, not just the fact that we only look at voting specifically, but that we look at the entire range of where youth are at.
Kind of sum up your experience with this project.
It's been really exhilarating and really fun.
Coming here as an immigrant, and then just, falling in love with the work here, with the environment here. It's one of the best places to work.
You put a lot of work over the last day or so. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I always feel great about this work. This is really fun work to do. We don't have the product yet, but we do have a really interesting finding, and so that's really exciting. It's going to be really exciting to share that with people. It's going to be really exciting, as Alan and Kay have mentioned, to get that information out there to folks so they can actually do more about focusing on supporting the youth vote and supporting youth civic engagement. And we are hoping to keep this momentum going.